So I showed you lots of examples on how to do step 3 and how to draw anything ever, like how to finish your artwork. And in this case, I'm going to show you how to use the watercolors. Before I start off painting anything, I've got to go back and erase everything. Everything that I've got on my piece of paper is setup lines because I'm going to come back after I've painted in all the shapes and I'm going to refine all the lines. So I'm going to redraw all the lines afterwards. That's really my process for illustrating with watercolor, is that I want to do my line work after I've filled everything in. So everything that I've got so far is just set up. It's really better to use a 2H pencil if you want to draw something and then work on it afterwards in watercolor, because 2H pencil has the least amount of graphite in it, and so it's not going to muddy up your colors. And you can see about different kinds of graphites in Module 2. Once I've got everything erased, it's time to start mixing up my colors. Now, the great thing about watercolors is that I can get really any color that I want. In this situation, I want to remind you, you want to start off by working up your colors in your pans. You want to load up a brush with water, rub it around lightly in the pan for all the colors that you're going to use to get them activated and get them ready. That way you don't have to do this stuff while you're painting. So the first color that I'm mixing up is for his body, that salmony pink kind of color. I want to remind you, the way that you're mixing these colors, you always start off with your lightest hue first. You put your lightest hue onto the palette, and then you add your darker hues on top of that lightest hue a little bit at a time. And as you're going to see in the video, it's exactly the opposite later on when I'm working with colored pencils. All right. But for this guy, I'm starting off making this pink color, and the pink color is really a combination of white, red, and orange. At least that's the combo that I used. I'm always pointing the tip of my brush at the lines, and then I'm filling it in after that because I'm trying to fill in these shapes really well. Same thing I showed you when we learned how to use the watercolors. And I've speeded things up so that you don't have to spend the next 5 minutes watching me fill in these shapes. Don't trip. This is just speeded up. Next, I'm working on the purple in Patrick Star. There's two purples in Patrick Star. There's the purple for the flowers and the purple for his eyelids. And the purple for his flowers on his shorts I'm doing first because it's the brighter of the two. And then after I'm done filling these in, I'm going to do the purple for his eyelids by adding a little bit of white to the purple for the flowers. Because they're both the same purple. One's just a little bit of a tint of the other. So I'm going around, I'm just showing you the same thing. I'm trying to point the tip of my brush at lines as I fill things in. And again, I'm going to speed stuff up for you. You don't need to watch all this in real time. Total amount of time it took me on this artwork, I want to say, was like one class period. Next up, I'm going to be working on the green for his shorts. And the green for his shorts, I'm making a combination of yellow and the lighter, brighter of the two greens that I've got. So, lighter hue is yellow, so I'm going to add it to the pan first. And then I'm adding a little bit of green at a time to that yellow until I've got the hue that I think is going to work. And I got it. Same process as everything else. Just like with the practice sheet, I'm spending time filling in all of these shapes by pointing the tip of my brush at the line. The great thing about this process, ladies and gentlemen, this dry brush technique that I'm using, is that by the time I'm done filling in one shape and then mixing up another color, the stuff that I'm going to be painting near is already dry. And so I can start working on the next shape and I don't have to worry about my colors mixing together. But you should always check and be sure, is it dry? Because if it gets all mixed in, it's just going to mess everything up. So I'm finishing this off with colored pencil, as you can see. I'm not doing my line work with the watercolors because I'm just not comfortable getting the kind of line quality that I want with a watercolor brush. The way that I'm mixing my colors is going to be just the opposite of how I mixed my colors when I was working with the watercolors. Colored pencil, I'm going to start off by putting a layer of my first color, and I'm starting off with a layer of my darker hue, and then I'm going to add on top of that darker hue my lighter hue to mix the two colors together. All right. I don't want to push super hard with my first color if I'm going to be mixing. All right. So I started off with the red, and then I'm coming back on top of that red with the orange, and I'm pushing harder in order to make this salmon colored line all the way around the outside. All right. So that's really the big difference. When I'm dealing with dry ingredients, when I'm dealing with media like colored pencil or crayon, I want to mix my colors by adding the lighter hue on top of the darker hue. And just as the opposite with my wet ingredients, if I'm going to be using medium like paint, I want to be sure that I'm starting off adding my lighter hue to my palette first, and then adding my darker hue to it a little bit at a time to mix my colors. That basic difference between the two makes all the difference in the world.